What is going on, everybody? I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. If you came in on this live stream today, doing it a little bit earlier because it is Thursday. My man, the myth, the legend, Matty Tanner in Tampa on Monday. Unfortunately, the Eagles didn't turn out amazing for them. I actually don't even know. I've been kind of plugged out of sports. If they fired Nick Sirianni yet today or not, we'll find out and then maybe dive into that as a little side note. But Matty's back. He's ready to go, and we are ready to preview UFC 297 pay-per-view coming to you from Toronto, Ontario, Canada this weekend. We are pumped for that. Really big fight as the headliner. Some good fights sprinkled throughout. Matty, how you doing today, bud?
I'm good, bro. I'm finally back in South Florida. I was there in Tampa. Eagles got their head slaps. Looked like shit. I've been down bad. This is the UFC card that's going to bring us back, though.
Absolutely. A big thing that I am doing this weekend is that I could not get my model to agree with me whatsoever as far as what someone who watches UFC every weekend, I'm seeing model results, and if it calls these upsets, I'd be absolutely floored because there's some evaluations that my model made this week that I totally don't agree with. I texted you yesterday. There are a lot of money lines and totals that don't really seem to match the winner in each of those circumstances. So I guess our task for today is to dive in and find out how we can interpret those totals to find the right winners, or interpret those money lines to find the right totals to target. One way or another, there's a sea of money out there. So you and I are going to try to dive in and pull some out and get you out of that down bad circus. I'm a Raiders fan, so things didn't go much better for me. So I am so thrilled to talk about this first fight on the card, not because the fight itself is very good, but because we could talk a lot of betting and UFC strategy at large here with this first fight up, the opener at flyweight. Malcolm Gordon and Jimmy Flick. Malcolm Gordon was available for as little as minus, let's see what we had here. What was Gordon? Gordon was minus 132 on FanDuel on Monday. He is now minus 220 on FanDuel as he just continues to soar, continues to rise. We'll talk a lot about why that is, some of the evaluation of these two. But what are your thoughts on the line movement here between these really bad flyweights, if I'm being fully honest with you?
Yeah, he got steamed, bro. He got absolutely steamed. I mean, I like Malcolm Gordon in this fight.
Yeah.
I think he made it to round 3 against Makhachev before getting submitted, right?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, so, and I mean, I know he's up against a good submission opponent here. Definitely gonna be danger. Definitely gonna have to stay out of danger in round 1. But on the feet here, I think it's really no contest.
Sure.
I like him in this fight, but how can you bet him after he's been steamed up that high? I think you have to find a different path here.
So we'll dive into some props, by the way. Good news about doing the show on Thursday, FanDuel Sportsbook, lots of props, especially for a pay-per-view, so we can really give direct betting advice like today. So we can look at some props in this fight, but I will say, I just find the line movement on this so interesting. I think what this is the collective MMA betting base. They go to the tape and they see, okay, yeah, well, Malcolm Gordon, from some of his striking sample, he's clearly a better striker in this fight. But I tweeted last night, imagine a world where it was December 2020. Jimmy Flick had just dominated on the Contender Series. He just flying triangled Cody Durden, who's a guy that, we have a lot of respect for. Flick would have been minus 500 over Malcolm Gordon, who at that point had lost to Amir Albazi by submission. He got knocked out by Sumajri. Like, these careers were on totally different trajectories and with age the same here. And then you kind of look at what happened to these guys. Gordon put in a good effort against Makhachev, but he still was probably dominated, is a fair way to say that. Got a win over Francisco Figueiredo, the worst of the two Figueiredo brothers. Broke Dennis Bondar's arm. That's kind of a fluke thing on Malcolm Gordon's side. And then just absolutely sent to the shadow realm by Jake Hadley. And Jimmy Flick goes and he retires, right? And then he comes back. He faces Charles Johnson. You and I both have liked Charles Johnson, backed him in some spots. He's a big dude for this weight class, lots of power. Alessandro Costa, big guy, lots of power, gave Steve Ursig a competitive fight a few months ago. I know Jimmy Flick's striking is trash. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not disagreeing with that point and why this line steamed up there. But here's what you're betting on if you're taking Malcolm Gordon, right? Never landed more than 22 distance strikes in a UFC fight. Zero evidence of knockout power in UFC whatsoever. And now all of a sudden you're paying minus 220 because of a striking advantage he may or may not have, when both of these guys have sub 10% takedown defense. It's awful. Like, they've been willing to accept bottom position against all others. So I don't know how this fight looks. I just don't know how you bet Malcolm Gordon at this larger number. If you like him at a pick 'em because of the striking, I get it, but now I think this is steamed way out of control, and it reminds me of another fight that you actually cashed on. I didn't. I had Cody Brundage against Cedric Dumas. Big line movement the week of that fight. Like Brundage could be had at like minus 125, balloon
Yeah.
200. And then you look at what Brundage's advantage he actually had, and this isn't like a short notice bout like that one, but I think Flick is live for this number while not certainly rushing to the window to bet on him. I just think the line movement in this fight is fascinating, bro.
Yeah, you know what's funny is there are going to be a bunch of people on the Canadian parlay,
Yeah.
and imagine the first fight of the night ruins it.
Yeah, so we got to figure out who sells from Canada, because the chalk, the popular, a lot of these lines are being inflated based on the hometown advantage, right? And I will say, in a few of these spots, UFC is giving these guys some pretty favorable matchups. But we got to figure out who's going to shit the bed, because if we parlay them all together like the rest of the squares, we're going to go down, right? And I don't know if I've got a couple Canadians that I'm not super into. I don't necessarily think Gordon sells. I would straight pick him in this fight. I've always thought Malcolm was a little bit underrated. He's got some chin concerns. I'm curious. Another fight that came to my mind that I had written down about this. You remember when I texted you about Jesus Aguilar against Shannon Ross right before it happened? And Aguilar had never had a professional knockout, just like Jimmy Flick, but he was facing a really, really chinny guy. And sometimes you just connect with a lazy right hand and put him out. I wonder what Jimmy Flick by knockout in this fight is, just because Gordon's chin. So it's 13-1 on FanDuel. Like, Gordon's chin has proven to fall down like a sack of potatoes multiple times over. I know Sumadri and Jake Hadley are a lot better, but a chin is a chin. And
Yeah,
you know, it's interesting to me. I really don't know what Flick's strategy will be in this fight. I don't know what strategy Gordon will take, but a lot of volatility around this dude. I find it fascinating from a betting angle.
yeah, that would be absolutely wild. 13-1 though. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I can't agree more. So maybe I know you love the long shot, so I threw that out there. I'm gonna give you another long shot that I'm gonna try to sell you on, like, to see. It's a 20-1 that I'm gonna sell you on later, and just see like how nuts you think I might be. But like, I am not. We established on the show, I'm no longer picking chins. I loved Phil Hawes last week. Like, the chat was rightfully mocking me. I always get chin bets wrong, so I'm not making a formal recommendation whether to take Jimmy or to take Malcolm. I will just say I think Jimmy Flick's chin concerns are overrated based on his fights with Johnson and Costa. I don't think Malcolm Gordon is even close to the same type of animal.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Cool.
Definitely fair.
I'm not touching this fight from Jeff in chat. That's probably the appropriate betting move if we're talking about betting value, and that's probably the right thing to do. So we'll move on to a fight that may have a better betting angle. This is actually not quite as long of a shot, but I guarantee I'm going to be able to sell Maddie into an angle on this one here. Jasmine Deicious, one of Canada, taking on Priscilla Kesshoua. Deicious had the great fight against UFC Noche against Tracy Cortez. Cortez looked like her striking was on a different level than where we had seen it previously. Otherwise, Jazz might have got the win. And then Priscilla Kesshoua, she's gotten a few knockouts. Like, that knockout over Ariane Lipski has aged well. It still happened in a few seconds. She's kind of volatile, and we saw that in her last fight against Miranda Maverick. Maverick was able to submit her in the third round, really dominated the fight on the ground, and that is where Priscilla has shown her most weakest. So this seems like a good matchup for Jazz on paper. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think this is a good bounce back spot for her.
Yeah.
You know, like, even though Tracy Cortez, I think that Tracy Cortez fight was just more about Cortez really made a lot of improvements, looked good on the feet.
Yep.
But I think Jasmine's good. I think this is a good bounce back spot for her. She has a 3-inch reach advantage in this fight. And I think she had a lot of nice back and forth exchanges with Tracy Cortez. She clearly lost the fight, but it wasn't by a landslide by any means. And I just think this is now a step back down in competition, where I think she can shine here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you look at Jazz Deicious's head-to-head in Canada with Miranda Maverick. She was bigger, stronger, better takedowns. And then Maverick was able to dominate Kesshoua in that regard.
Right.
So I know math isn't perfect, but when you break it down into individual elements, you can kind of see that. The interesting thing about Jazz Deicious that makes her maybe a little nerve-wracking at this number, not a finisher by any means. She's gone the distance in all of her UFC fights. Only one career win by submission, so that number is probably a little short. I actually think that plays to you and I's benefits. The angle I wanted to sell you on here, because she hasn't really had any chin concerns. Striking defense is a bit iffy, but like she took a lot of clean shots from Tracy Cortez. So I don't know if Kesshoua is going to be able to just one punch her like she did Lipsky. Jourdain, if that chin holds, I love playing her like a round 2-3 angle here. I haven't actually looked at what it is because she's not a finisher. She's more deliberate. This would be a slow wilting, a slow breaking. I don't think Jourdain is going to take her right down and submit her. She's actually never attempted an official submission attempt in UFC. So I just think Jazz fights very patient, very calculated. So I'm looking at like a round 2-3 angle for her. And I wouldn't go with a specific method just because without the submission attempt, it could be a ground and pound. It could be a lot of different ways. So I'm looking for a round betting here if I can get it. Jourdain is plus 800 to win round 2, plus 1,000 to win round 3. Like, would I rather bet that, or would I rather bet the decision prop my model recommends at minus 105? Like, I think I'd rather just take tiny nibbles at Jourdain eventually breaking her.
Yeah. Yeah, and the KO and submission is actually pretty even. Right, her to win by knockout in round 2 is 16 plus 1,600. Her to win by submission in round 2 is plus 1,600. So that's pretty interesting to me. I mean, I think the TKO is going to be a lot more likely.
Wow. It is the overall TKO, bro, plus 460, submission plus 480. I would have guessed submission was much, much shorter. That's really weird. That's really, really weird.
Yeah. No, I like the round 2-3 TKO, 16-1 and 19-1 on round 3.
Right. The interesting thing is Kesshoua, 45% striking defense, absorbs over 7 significant strikes a minute. She's nicknamed Zombie Girl for a reason. She usually has a ton of damage. Like, she was eating a ton of damage against Gina Bazzani, ended up coming back. Like, Jourdain's striking has not looked good in spots, but she got Natalia Silva, she got Tracy Cortez. Like, I don't think her striking is like amateurish. I think it's pretty good. So like, if it was a standing KO, it wouldn't be overly surprising, but Kesshoua has shown a pretty good chin. But like, look at the ages here. They're both getting up there a little bit. Maybe the chin fleets a little bit. I've talked to some sharps that kind of like a play on Kesshoua just because the number is really long for the hammer. But I mean, I don't think I backed Kesshoua against Lipsky. That's the only time I've ever backed her in an entire UFC career. Lipsky had, I think if they rematch, Lipsky would absolutely beat the crap out of Kesshoua like nowadays with the Nunes. So I don't hold much weight in it. What do you think about that round 3 angle? Is that probably the angle you think you might take?
Yeah, no, I like it a lot, honestly. I want to watch a little more tape.
Yeah.
But round 2-3, I think it's a good bounce back spot.
Yeah.
I really do. I think it's a great bounce back spot. And I feel like a fighter coming off a loss like that, like she's gonna be searching for that finish.
Yeah, she's effectively 16th in UFC's ranking. She was 15th and dropped out with the Cortez fight, which was decently close. I think she got earned it. If it wasn't a split, the rounds were at least kind of close. So 16th ranked fighter against someone who has a losing record in UFC in her home country. You can kind of put the context clues together. So we'll move on. Another interesting one. Like, I think the betting angles on these fights are interesting. They're better than the fights themselves. Like, talking about it, I'm glad we're talking about this from a betting perspective instead of a preview perspective, because honestly, who cares about some of these? But the bets is kind of interesting. This is another one. Johan Lenius is the Canadian here, taking on Sam Patterson, whose UFC debut did not go well. He was knocked out in 75 seconds by Yanal Ashmouz. Patterson is a big guy, 6'3". He's going to move out to welterweight for the very first time in his pro MMA career, taking on Lenius in his home country. It is a tall task, but he is not that long of an underdog. What are you thinking in this fight? Because I had mixed feelings about it throughout the week.
Yeah, I mean, Johan's only plus 125 to win by knockout, and I'm pretty sure that's how this fight's going to go.
Yeah.
I mean, look, just off the principle alone, you get finished at a lower weight class, then you move up in weight, and you fight a guy who's got legit power.
Right.
It's as simple as that, in my opinion. Plus, this dude, look at this dude's neck, chin up in the air. Like, I just feel like he's going to get slept in this fight, but again, if he can survive early, I think he can have success here. But I just feel like, you get knocked out very quickly and then you go up in weight. I mean, sometimes it can be beneficial, right? If you're not in the cut as much now, but I just think this is the wrong matchup for him coming off a knockout loss, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, what if it does it make you feel better? Sam Patterson, 44% striking defense, 33% takedown defense. Both of those really bad.
Yeah.
Through the Contender Series appearance at lightweight as well. How many of these long guys with their chins up in the air have we seen in UFC? When they get knocked out, they just look like wacky waving inflatable tube men just falling backwards. Like,
Reminds me of Tom Nolan last week.
yeah, and Tom Nolan was another guy, lanky guy with a
Oh
little
my
chin up in
God.
the
I'm
air.
so mad about that fight. It was such
Yeah,
a bad read.
yeah, you and I think that was an anti-Moda bet for me of like why I had Nolan in a parlay.
Exactly. Same
Yeah,
here.
and in hindsight, you
Did
could
you see
see
what Moto posted on Instagram?
what'd he say?
He posted a picture of him and said parlay killer.
He's right. He nailed that. He
He
was a
was.
parlay killer.
Yeah.
The thing I will say about Len, yes, we've seen some submission skills. I feel like if the chalk ends up failing here, it could be because everyone was betting KO, round 1 KO, and then he ends up finding a sub. I will say Patterson's grappling actually looks pretty good on tape. That's how he won his Contender Series appearance, and he's shown some pretty good volume with that as well. So I don't know if Len, yes, maybe a bigger, stronger guy because Patterson just it is such a tough thing to fight your entire life to make it to UFC at 155. And now he's got to face guys that are realistically, when they're full weight, not like cutting down, they're 20, 30 pounds heavier than him at welterweight. When you talk about Len Yes cutting versus what Patterson could possibly weigh, like it's a big, big difference. So I'm with you. I think there are good angles to this fight. It's a very clear fight to me where I kind of want to bet Len Yes round 1 plus 220. And then I'd bet Patterson tiny sprinkles round 2 plus 750, round 3 14-1. And the reason why is because Len Yes cardio, especially in that Gabe Green fight, that's how he lost the fight. Len Yes looked much better than Gabe Green early, just kind of expired with gas tanks, really had a hard time maintaining any volume against Darian Weeks. Like, and I think Patterson's got really good cardio. So I think I take maybe a half unit at Len Yes round 1, then maybe a quarter unit Patterson round 2 and 3. There's a payoff there somewhere of at least 1 unit for any of those win conditions, and I think it's such an obvious dynamic in this fight. So
Yeah.
I like that
Yeah.
split
So
for this.
Patterson by KO is plus 470.
Yeah.
And then
Let's see.
Patterson by submission is plus 380.
Yeah.
Maness by submission plus 950 for the
Woo!
bigger, stronger guy. That's an interesting one.
Woo! And he's shown submission stuff in UFC before. It's one thing to take that leap with a guy that hasn't shown, but 0.5 submission attempts per 15 is a decent rate, even though Len Yes's samples kind of
sub too.
Yeah. I honestly think Darian Weeks is better than an 0-3 record. Like, I don't think Len Yes's competition has been that awful. Like, Gabe Green has hung in there with Ian Gary and some other guys, and then he got Mike Malott last time out and was submitted. The Malott we're going to talk about later in the show. I think it's a good competition level. Like, to me, this is a favorable matchup for Len Yes. Like Patterson, you are taking a significant risk on the chin. You're really maybe fading Len Yes's cardio more than anything, which I think is fair. I think it's fair, but man, is it risky. And that's why I'd rather have plus 750 round 2, 14-1 round 3 in case his gas tank just expires.
I mean, what do you think about a violence bet in this fight?
Yep, absolutely. I'm guessing the round line is 1.5. Yeah, under 1.5.
The fight did not hit the cards is minus 600. That's
absolutely. It's just Len Yes's gas tank against a guy in Patterson who does have great pace. Like his grappling pace especially is really high. I don't think if Len Yes doesn't starch him or doesn't take him down, submit him quickly, Patterson will be the rallying party in this fight. And that's why I get nervous for like DFS purposes because I don't get to this is a live betting opportunity as well. Maybe you just go in with Len Yes and then you can pick up Patterson on the money line if he got dominated in round 1. But I'm telling you, he will rally throughout. So you might see me tweet out. I'm like, I'm taking Sam live here, but I may also just take the round 2-3 prop beforehand on the same basis. You know, like the thing is that books know that Patterson has the better cardio. They're not going to hang a free Len Yes, not like a free plus 600, even if it's like a 10-8 first round. If he survives, Patterson's very live. I think that number will be shorter than you might expect.
Yeah, and you can get Patterson to win in round 2 at plus 750.
Right.
And then even if you wanted to just take a violence bet but not pay as much juice, the fight to not start round 3 minus 280 could be a good parlay piece.
Wow. Ooh, that is really enticing.
That could be a good parlay. That could be part of our parlay.
interesting that it's so different. And I think that is the book hedging against Len Yes's cardio. Like if we get to the end of round 2, the gap could be widening and maybe he survives, but he's a dead man walking headed into round 3. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see. I think it's a great fight. I think it's brilliant matchmaking by the UFC. Maybe less so in this
100%.
fight. We got some women's MMA on tap. It really intriguing. Our guy, I think is JJ, right? Pulls the lines for us on
Yeah.
these slides.
Yep.
JJ does a great job for us. He could not catch this number in time. It's been moving so fast. Jillian Robertson minus 200 Monday. She's now minus 330 when I look on FanDuel Sports.
That's ridiculous.
Another person getting steamed way up. We don't love women's MMA favorites typically. Poliana Viana on the other side here is the reason why that line keeps getting steamed up. You beat me head to head. You like Tabitha Ricci. I liked Jillian Robertson. Jillian let me down with her takedown prowess in that fight. If she does it again, she probably loses this one too. So what are you thinking in this fight between these two ladies?
I'm torn on this fight, bro. I mean, I think Jillian's clearly the pick, but the odds, the steam on her as a favorite when her striking is just so subpar. And Poliana Viana is not really a slouch on the ground. Like, she's a BJJ black belt. Like, the question is, can she stuff the takedowns of Jillian? I think that's the real question here. But this is a tough one. It really is. I mean, I think it could be a decent bounce back spot for Jillian. Probably worked on her striking a ton since that Tabitha Ricci fight. But at the same time, there's no chance I'm taking her at, what is it, up to minus 350?
Yeah, minus 350.
No
yeah, no like chance. we're not tossing Jillian in a parlay. It's too volatile. My now retired or in the shop, however you want to phrase it, model liked Viana in this fight just because of the massive striking advantage. But my concern with Viana is she's just been so historically willing to accept bottom position. Just a 43% takedown defense, allowed 5 of 10 attempts to Tabitha Ricci. I will say just on takedowns alone, Jillian is right there with Tabitha. The thing that separated those two was Tabitha also has some pretty solid work on the feet as well, and Jillian wasn't able to keep up. Just takedown for takedown, we know what Robertson's game plan is. She dominated Piera Rodriguez, who was on a little bit of a run in this division. And Piera had shown better defensive grappling than Viana. The problem I have with Viana beyond the OnlyFans model fade, which is a very real thing here, is that the Ayesman Lucindo fight. I thought she was decent value. I thought Lucindo was maybe overvalued. She could not stop the takedowns. Lucindo went 2 for 2 despite not showing a ton of offensive wrestling before that point, and then ended up getting submitted. So Viana's gotten a couple of cheeky arm bars on her resume, but I don't know if she's like really, really sophisticated with the grappling and the jiu-jitsu. I know Jillian is, and it's interesting the books have caught up. She doesn't match this division's historical trend. She's a finisher. 8 of her 9 UFC wins by finish.
Right.
All of them submissions. So she's plus 145 by sub here. We could get a little cheeky talking about rounds, but like I actually think I might sooner take points at plus 230 than submission at plus 145. Just we saw Viana coast out the end against Tabitha Ricci. Let me look at the rest of her resume here, where she faced some takedowns, was able to stay in the fight. Well, she really didn't face a lot of takedowns early on. Submitted an armbarred by Veronica Hardy.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. Bro, what do you think about round 2-3 sub for Jillian here? The numbers are pretty good.
Yeah, the numbers are pretty good.
Plus 650, plus 950.
Oh, well, those are more than pretty good. I think they're outstanding. Like, especially since
I mean, you got to sweat the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think Viana's really lost in round 1, except that, I mean, the Veronica Hardy fight. But that was how long ago?
That was 2019, so it's almost outside of what I'd consider the sample. So it's like I kind of like 2-3 just because we saw Viana hang in there even through some power punches against Lucindo, hang the whole distance against Ricci. I lean a little bit of length in this fight. So I think plus 650, plus 950 is really nice, especially when Robertson hasn't really. I think she submitted Kesshoua in the first round. She did, but went to the second round with Agapova, went to the second round with Piera Rodriguez, third round with Courtney Casey, second round Veronica Hardy, second round Molly McCann. So Jillian has not always just been takedown dominant. And by the way, that Kesshoua submission, only 9 seconds left in the round. So she's not like a Mackenzie Dern level grab your arm and you're dosed in 90 seconds type of grappler. She's much more so position, doesn't take a lot of chances. And I think she's still a little bit underrated. I know her striking is not great, but you look at some of the names that she's faced and some of the names she's beaten. Like she's lost to Macy Barber, Miranda Maverick, Tyler Santos, maybe JJ Aldrich notwithstanding, but then Tabitha Ricci as well. So really good girls on that resume. And Viana, I'm very iffy on. I'm very skeptical. I thought Lucinda was a decent position for her, but her wins, Jinyu Fry, Mallory Martin, Emily Whitmire, Maya Stevenson. I did the legwork for my article on FanDuel Research. I forget what the record was. It's not a winning record between those girls that she's beaten. So I get the juice. It is expensive and the props have followed, but I kind of like that round 2-3 angle you and I may have crafted up here on stream.
Yeah, I think round two makes a ton of sense.
A lot of round twos on a resume. And like we missed this with Muhammad Makayev last year, where he had been getting all these third round subs in a row. You and I went 1-2 on the submission. We left out the historical trend. So maybe we make up for our errors with the Savage on Saturday, Jillian. I think both of us like her to win. Just had to nitpick a little for maybe a value spot. So we'll move forward here. Next fight up on the card, actually a rematch of the Contender Series. I was not thrilled with the end result of this one, having backed Ramon Taveras in the first fight. A little bit of controversy as these guys fought on the Contender Series. Sari Saidi gets a drop. Taveras goes down. Referee steps in a little bit early. Is probably an early stoppage, even if you back City in the fight. And then Taveras gets another shot on a Contender Series later, knocks out Romeus as a plus 150 underdog or so. So Taveras is very familiar with this underdog position. He just cashed in it. A little bit of revenge, but City, the native Canadian here, I think most people would say probably the more well-rounded MMA fighter. I think it's an intriguing fight to run back. I love the decision to do so. What are you thinking on this Dana White Contender Series rehash?
The first one was definitely an early stoppage. I think this is a good revenge spot for that early stoppage. We'll see. What's his odds? I can't see the screen. Is it plus 150?
Taveras. So Taveras is still plus 150 on FanDuel. Yep.
Plus 150. This could be the one that hurts the parlay.
Yeah. Here's the Canadian.
Yeah. I think he has the better strike in. Mm-hmm. I like that he bounced back after that, that bad beat, wins the vicious knockout, and then gets the guy that, there was an early stoppage against. So I think this is a great spot for him. I do want to watch some more footage for sure. I haven't had a chance to dive into this one too much. Yeah. But what are your thoughts on the under in this fight too?
Yeah, I definitely lean under here because of Taveras. Taveras has not only been knocked out twice in the first round, he's also been dropped if you turn on some footage. Like he's had some chin issues. The chin is definitely a little iffy, and that means here comes an Austin Swaim chin bet, which is really, really nerve-wracking for those in attendance. Like
every one of these guys fight except he had one fight in one decision back in 2021. Every other fight has pretty much ended in round 1 or 2. The over-under is at 1.5. The unders, it's about to pick them.
Yeah.
Minus 118, minus 108.
I honestly lean under, bro, because I think if Taveras' chin holds, I think he beats the brakes off of City in this spot. Like, I mean, you look at their efficiency from their first fight, Taveras landed 57% to City's 35%. Really, the only thing of note City landed was the drop, right? And there are all sorts of extraneous circumstances. You're super nervous. You're trying to earn your Contender Series contract. So that's a very different environment than this, where even if Taveras loses, he's in the UFC. He earned it in the Contender Series finale. And like, I think you just watched these two strike from that original rematch. Taveras was landing the cleaner shots, seemed to have the cleaner hands. And I don't necessarily agree with City being a super well-rounded guy. He might be more well-rounded than Taveras, but only one career win via submission. Like, I think have you seen a lot of footage on City either through Contender Series or leading into this one? Because to me, he seems very mechanical. It doesn't feel very natural. Whereas Taveras as a striker reminds me a little bit more of like a Chito Vera, where his hands, he's just a very naturally gifted striker. I'm not good with film analysis, which unfortunately, when you have small samples like these two, I'm kind of forced to try. But
Right.
that was my interpretation, and it didn't look like Tavares was having any problems with the reach advantage either.
Yeah, no, I want to watch some more footage on this one.
Yeah.
But I think that's good. I think that's good analysis for
Let's
sure.
let's look at some props here because I'd want to look at Tavares by KO, which is coming back at plus 350. So boy, that feels pretty long for me when I'd say that's a good chunk of his win condition. I mean, I certainly would favor him on the cards if City could survive, but um they were very lopsided in the very brief amount of time that they fought. That would be a long time for City to get his ass kicked like that and survive. It'd be
Right.
like Benoit Saint Denis Zaleski dos Santos type of vibes. So
Yeah.
you know what's yeah, I just want to acknowledge this for the audience. We've been in a bit of a cold spell. But Maddie and I have kind of disagreed on some fights, went one way or another. Maddie and I are totally in sync to start this card. Like that's how you can tell it's
Yeah.
probably going to be pretty special because like you and I have been on the same
Let's
page,
hope.
kind of leaning dog here. I don't want to lay minus 194 with a newcomer that had really shitty efficiency stats on Contender Series. That sounds like a horrible idea. I don't care what country he's from.
Right. Agreed.
So
Agreed completely.
so we'll circle back. I think both of us lean Tavares with not a lot of confidence, but my fight of the night here in this next one, I think a lot of people's fight of the night, a couple of featherweight strikers and killers. Charles Jourdain, of course, representing Quebec. He's the home country guy here, minus 210 favorite, but the sniper, Sean Woodson on the other side. We've seen some really marquee UFC moments from both of these guys. And then we've also seen some really bad disappointments and some things that weren't oh so great. Both of them actually lost via submission to our featherweight overlord if he had a chin. That would be Julian Erosa. I think that guy would be championship material if he had any sort of chin whatsoever. But he was able to sub both of these guys. Interesting fight. It's my fight of the night because I think you have two strikers that are willing to go to war here. Interesting betting line too. What are you thinking on this guy?
Yeah, no, I do think this could be one of the fight of the nights for sure. I mean, Woodson has an 83% takedown defense, so I think this is just going to be a war on the feet.
Me
The
too.
only thing that concerns me, like, do you feel like Woodson's last win hasn't aged that well, considering he then goes out and gets finished in his first round in his next fight?
Yeah. I mean, Bazooka's terrible, and that is the concern. But like Woodson in that fight, I watched
He was
it back.
getting takedowns. He was
He was
like
kind of
literally
just like
spamming takedowns.
he was playing around. You know, he was like practicing his wrestling a little bit. Like so, like
Yeah,
you're like,
that's
well, he
fair.
went the distance, but I also don't think Woodson was doing what would have optimally won him the fight as quick as possible. It almost looked like he was showing off a little bit. No.
No, I agree. Yeah, something was going on because
Yeah.
it was just strange that that was his game plan. Um,
It's kind of an interesting wrinkle into this one when Jourdain has a 47% takedown defense. That's how we've seen guys get the better of him before. But the thing that Jourdain's added is this sneaky submission game. Got a one-arm
right.
guillotine on Lando Venata. Submitted Ricardo Ramos. Did you like Ramos or Jourdain in that last fight? I
Dude,
like.
I was shocked at
Yeah,
that.
me too.
So first of all, it was a crazy scramble, I think, right? And like the sub could have kind of gone either way, and then
Mhm.
I think he got a guillotine choke in that round in round one.
Yep,
And he fought Crown Gracie the fight before that,
and didn't get submitted. He
right?
fought
And
that
he
fight
just
really responsibly.
yeah, he just like I'll just take a decision win easily here. That's pretty much what he did. I just feel like Jourdain's gonna be the way more aggressive guy with the higher finishing equity. You know, I think that's the way I'm looking at this fight. But I
Yeah,
mean, Woodson is a massive dude, though. He's got a crazy reach advantage, so
yeah.
it is an interesting fight.
I do think this is going to be a very awkward fight for Charles on the feet because of the reach, right? And Sean is he's very gifted there. Efficiency numbers about the same on the feet. Like my model, my retired model had it about 50-50 in the striking. And that I agree with. Jourdain, probably better level of competition to this point. Like we've had some Woodson issues with Bazooka and some other guys in there that weren't super quality. The Luis
Mhm.
Saldana fight, I think, is why Jourdain is a big favorite here because he was dropped twice in that first round. Saldana didn't fight very smart the rest of the fight. Otherwise, he might have been able to get him out of there. Um, I don't know if Jourdain has as much power as you guys think he does, though, is my thing. Because we've seen it in chat. Jourdain just a 0.71% knockdown rate. It's not very special. Like, and he's gone the distance was so like he didn't get Julian Erosa out of there. Julian Erosa, we've already talked about chin issues
Yeah,
galore. The last guy that he knocked out was a bantamweight. That was Marcelo Rojo, fought at 135 regionally. So he wasn't in the right weight class. Like, I don't think there's a lot of power from either of them, in which case I got a guy that's really efficient, 9-inch reach advantage. And Jourdain, the biggest thing is that Woodson has elite takedown defense, like you mentioned. Jourdain has basically no takedown offense on the ledger in UFC. So I see Jourdain as a big favorite because of the flag next to his name, because of that Luis Saldana fight. But in general, I feel good about Sean's chin. He had the power to knock out Terrence McKinney with a knee or an unorthodox strike. Like,
Yeah.
I lean Woodson here, but I think my favorite play is the over, like 2.5 rounds, kind of a war type of environment. Maybe Jourdain gets a nod that he doesn't deserve. What's this fight to go the distance on FanDuel? I'm gonna
Well,
take
I
a
was
look at it.
looking. So Woodson by decision is plus 290.
Weird.
I thought it'd be a little better number than that, but
Yeah.
total rounds over under the over 2.5 is minus 140.
Yeah. I was going to try to sell you on a point on the long shot in this fight based on, look at Sebastian's first comment there. Jourdain going to get frustrated and run into takedowns. So Woodson actually has a surprising amount of submission volume in UFC. Some of it was against Bazooka. Jourdain doesn't really specialize in takedowns, though. I wonder if he maybe runs into a guillotine here. That's just like a random dart, and it's priced like that on FanDuel. When you look at Woodson by submission at 20-1, like, I know you love the long shots, Matty. I don't know if I can sell you on that appropriate. Woodson, by the way, was in great position up against Bazooka. He's not a very strong guy, like muscular, doesn't have a lot of upper body mass. He can't to make 145 at his size, but I think that that's an interesting angle to this fight. Is Jourdain gets frustrated, doesn't know what he's doing, starts entering on takedowns, and Woodson, I'm sure, has a guillotine in that kit because it's a perfect counter to a lot of guys trying to take him down.
Yeah. The problem is, I just feel like he would have to hurt him first to even have a chance at that. I mean, you just look at based on what I saw in that last fight against Ricardo Ramos. I thought Ramos had a submission locked in. I mean, Jourdain, I just think is really good.
Yeah,
at getting out of them and reversing position and finding his own. I mean, does he have any losses by sub? He's one submission loss.
It was Erosa, got him with a Darce choke.
That's right. Darce, yeah.
So like I think that if I were Sean Woodson, I would give him 2 tactical tips in this fight. Number 1, I think you're actually putting yourself in more danger to go for takedowns, even though they might come. Jourdain has a good guillotine and he's shown prowess on bottom. And number 2, he's got to check kicks because that's where Jourdain's going to go. He landed 33 kicks on Andre Ewell. If he takes a similar game plan here, he could beat up Woodson's leg, and then you're looking at a TKO type of finish. That was the little bit of reservation before I was locking in Sean Woodson money line in this fight. Like, I don't know how well Woodson's going to check kicks when Jourdain has shown a history of doing that against these long, tall guys.
Right. No, that's a good analysis. I mean, you could look at Jourdain round 2, 3 if you're going to play. I think if you're going to play the TKO.
Yeah. That's another thing, by the way, when I retool my model, I want to incorporate leg kick volume and leg kick susceptibility. I think it's a huge dynamic in MMA that's kind of underrated. Reach advantage can quickly dissipate if you start attacking that calf and start getting guys that aren't able to move and circle the octagon as much. So that's I think it's a great fight. That's why it's my fight of the night. I do like the over. Like, I like it to go the distance in general because there's not a lot of power here. Maybe Woodson's leg does get beat up, but I don't know if Pillow Hands Jourdain can finish him anyway. So great fight.
Right.
A lot of different betting angles. I tried to sell Matty on a few different things, and I'm sure he'll go back to the lab and cook up something good.
Yeah.
But
on DFS, his Jourdain's significant strikes is at 76.5.
I like that. I like that just because if he takes the Ewell game plan, that's probably 33 significant strikes. And then he's just got to find body, head. Jourdain's shown some willingness to go to the body. The head striking accuracy from Jourdain may be very, very low in this fight. Woodson's going to be a long, long way away.
That's a good point.
So, and I don't think Woodson's got a ton of KO equity, but we will head to the featured prelim here. It always makes me laugh when I see like the Ultimate Fighter guys. It looks like Brad Katona in our headshot is wearing like an adult blue diaper is what it looks like. The Ultimate Fighter shorts. That's my first takeaway. But feature prelim, another Canadian, Brad Katona, just won the Ultimate Fighter for a second time. Back in UFC, probably deserved it. One of his 2 losses was Marab. Like, come on, what are we doing? Katona was just boring. That's why UFC let him go so quickly. taking on Garrett Armfield, coming off a huge win in Singapore over Toshiomi Kazama. I've heard pretty good arguments on both sides of this fight this week. What is your argument opening, if you will?
Yeah, I like Katona by decision. I haven't spent a lot of time on this fight,
Sure.
but I just think he's going to be more well-rounded, and I think he can be boring at times. We'll see what that
Yeah.
number's at, but I think he just has to look out for some of the striking and the power, and I think he can mix in takedowns and win a decision here.
Yes, I'm on the same page. I will say that it's getting a little expensive. Katona's -210 on FanDuel, like money line. I'm sure his
Yeah.
decision prop is close to even money, if not minus money at this point.
Plus
Because
125.
okay, that's all right. For what you'd figure would be his primary outcome. He doesn't have an official UFC submission attempt, but he does have 3 listed pro submissions. And by the way, the one that's not on his resume submitted Bryce Mitchell in the Ultimate
Really?
Fighter submission. So
Oh,
that
yeah.
one's not on his resume, but it was a very impressive thing that I got to see with my eyeballs. And I think
And he
Katona is
beat
a very
Kyler Phillips.
yep.
That's
Katona's got a good resume. He's a good fighter, and weirdly, Cody Gibson, like you know how guys like goalies get hot in the Stanley Cup Finals, and then like bad teams end up moving on to the finals. Gibson was really hot through that Ultimate Fighter run, especially defending takedowns. It ended up being a nightmare matchup for Brad because the length was such an issue that Brad was having really hard time getting into the ground. He was having a hard time not getting caught on entry. But the thing is, Katona was also beating the shit out of Gibson as far as like landing at will. He broke Gibson's orbital bone. We saw Gibson have that giant mass on his like. Katona's power might be a bit underrated, and I think the biggest thing here, I mentioned the submission skills. Garrett Armfield, 2 of his 3 pro losses by submission, was submitted by David Onama at featherweight, which almost doesn't even count because Onama, bigger guy, good guy, bigger weight class. But my problem with Armfield is that the win over Toshiomi Kazama does absolutely nothing for me. That dude's not UFC caliber. He lost on road to the UFC. They brought him back for a second fight anyway, and he looked like an amateur. So I don't know how much I can read into Armfield, and this is where I was talking about retooling my process. Armfield's peripherals are sparkling here, but his opponent was not UFC caliber. So I think I could have been led in a wrong way really, really quickly here, even though I wouldn't model Armfield. He doesn't have enough minutes in UFC to qualify, but I like Katona here. I'm interested what his submission prop is. It wasn't there yesterday.
Plus 390 for the
Interesting.
sub. Round 2's plus 1300. Round 3's plus 1800.
And I would lean later just because
Yeah.
typically if a guy has not gotten to an official submission attempt in UFC, he takes time to work. I'm pretty sure that Mitchell sub was outside the first round too.
Round 3.
Yeah. So
I don't mind a sprinkle on round 2, 3 sub at all.
I think that'll be my angle as well. Just a sprinkle on round 2, 3 sub, knowing that a vast majority of the time here, it probably ends by points, but I'd say those 2 marks are kind of undervalued.
And both of Armfield's last 2 submission losses were in round 2.
Yeah. Armfield, your guy kind of trains with your guys. He's a Killcliff guy from Florida, so I don't know if you've heard anything from some friends and family about.
I'll try to get the scoop.
Yeah, and see, but I think Katona is just a tough out, especially in his home country. And the biggest anecdotal thing I want people to remember in this fight: the UFC wants the Ultimate Fighter to work. If Brad Katona comes back to UFC and he sucks, and they have to cut him in 2 or 3 fights, it only hurts the show. It only hurts the product. They probably are trying to do everything they can to get him a nice winnable matchup and maybe be a little bit more exciting along the way. The Gibson fight was like fight of the night. So maybe Katona comes out, maybe he's able to find a submission and a finish, and he's got a little bit of a idea of what he needs to do in this second run to stay with.
Yeah. No, I'm starting to really like it. My initial read was decision, and I mean that price really sucks, and I made up a lot of good points. Even people in the comments saying, you know, Brad was really looking for that finish in his last fight, and he's got to get more excited, and starting to be sold a lot on it.
And I'll add this: he's got great cardio, which always helps. Where Armfield's cardio, it was definitely not great in that Onama fight. Again, tough circumstances, but I'd be very, very hard pressed to believe Armfield's cardio is better. Katona was fresh as a daisy late in that Gibson fight, so I'd have a hard time believing that. So we're kind of on the same page. That's kind of how I like to attack some of these fights. Tough betting card is Is Evloev after this one, Maddie, on the slides?
Did I miss one? Yeah,
Oh,
I did miss one.
I thought Mubsar was the opener. Okay, we'll have to go back for the next
Yeah,
one.
we'll come back.
It's
Cool.
all good. It's all good. But I'm so happy we're going to start this main card. We've got some big fights on this main card. One of them for the title, maybe notwithstanding. But how about this banger at featherweight, Maddie? Arnold Allen coming off a performance against Max Holloway that wasn't embarrassing by any means, but he didn't win. That's still a tough ask when Max Holloway going to be fighting for the BMF belt. Maybe we talk about that a little later. Taking on Movsar Evloev, kind of the boogeyman here at featherweight. Maybe we saw a little bit of chinks in the armor with Diego Lopez getting kind of close on a few of those submissions in his last fight. These are two super well respected guys, and like at this, I've heard great arguments on both sides. So I'm curious to where you might lead in this featherweight banger.
Yeah, so this is a tough fight for both guys, honestly. What's crazy is my buddy that has trained with Bryce Mitchell, Ilya Taporia, and Mosfar here said that this guy is better than Ilya Taporia, and that said that he's the real deal.
Interesting.
And I'm super high on Arnold Allen, but I think this is a tough matchup for him. Just relentless pressure and grappling and wrestling, and I think this is a really tough matchup for him. I could see a decision win here. I think Arnold Allen could maybe lose a decision here. Arnold Allen is really good, though, man. He's really good.
He is.
I'm really torn on this fight. What are the odds right now?
So we're looking at now. Evloev is -205. It stayed put here. Allen +158 coming back on the other side. So it stayed put here at least through Wednesday and Thursday. I will say that I think the biggest individual upset on this card would be if there was a finish in this fight. I don't trust Jazz Deicious. We'll talk about Mike Malott and some big favorites later. I would be shocked if there was a finish in this fight. It's -310 to go the distance. I almost think it's a parlay piece for us when these guys so talented and not a lot of finishing equity against others. Evloev 7 for 7 on decisions against some really ugly competition at times. Now, Diego Lopez, Dan Ige is not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Mike Grundy. I'm talking about, some of the other guys in Evloev's earlier career. And like the thing about Arnold Allen, I doubted him a little bit just because his striking volume is very low. You would hope to see better. You'd hope to see more accurate. But then you look at the results. I mean, he dropped and beat Sadiq Youssef, clobbered Dan Hooker in England back in March 2022. The knee injury against Cater, but Allen was winning the fight up to that point already. So I don't want to dismiss him there. And then Max Holloway, we've seen Max run circles around dudes with significant strikes. Only 147 for Holloway in that fight, landed 56%. So it wasn't like this superhuman performance from Max. I think Allen is incredibly talented, incredibly durable. I like this fight to go the full distance. So does the retired model, by the way. But I think that is my.
And Arnold Allen's never been finished.
Nope, Allen's never been professionally finished. Evloev hasn't really shown it, and Evloev hasn't shown a ton of submission volume either. Just 0.1, or no, I'm sorry.
I more position oriented.
0.3 attempts per 15 minutes, same as Allen. I talked to a guy, put 3 units on Allen. I talked to another guy, put 4 units on Evloev. I have no idea how they have such a strong opinion about this fight because I think the margins are going to be very narrow. Not a lot of knockdown volume in this fight, not a lot of submission volume. And these guys are both incredibly skilled defensively. I think Allen gives Evloev everything he can handle. If you lay that -205, you're probably going to be sweating it. But if I got a straight pick for my house, I would take Mubsar.
Yeah. Arnold Allen by decision is +310.
Yeah, interesting.
Which is, I think, if he can just do some more damage on the feet, maybe he gets taken down and controlled a good bit. But, if damage truly wins fights, then that could be an interesting angle. Evloev by decision is -120.
Yeah. Do you want to let's talk a little Allen takedown defense? Because I think it's got to be first of mind.
Please.
Allen takedown defense, 76% analytically, hasn't been taken down in 6 years. And most of the takedown damage came early in his career. He gave up 12 takedowns in the first 3 fights or 4 fights of his career. Now, he hasn't fought guys that are really like wrestling specialists. The most recent was Nick Lentz, tried to take him down 9 times. He stuffed all 9. Evloev very efficient on those, 50% historically. So I think that decides this fight. But Allen's takedown recovery is pretty good. His submission skills aren't bad. Like I think that it will be easier for Evloev to have taken down Diego Lopez than it will be Allen on Saturday. And with that hypothesis,
completely.
we saw
but
how
also Lopez also doesn't give a shit if you take him down.
That's
he
true.
Actually he prefers it. Like even I feel then, like yeah.
Even then, let's look at. I mean, Evloev went 4 for 7 on takedowns, so it wasn't like this sparkling performance. So Lopez was able to hold him off a few times. So
yeah,
I think Allen's takedown defense is not only better, it's more urgent, like you said. So, and right. How many times have we seen guys struggle to get takedowns, and then the guy that wins the round is the guy that's elbowing him against the cage or just doing the damage, landing the more impactful strikes? And from a power perspective, would you say Allen or Evloev has that edge? I've seen Allen knock guys out, so I'd probably go with Arnie.
Allen. Yep. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I want to see what the significant strike number is for. Oh, it's not even up.
That's very interesting. So it's not up yet?
It's because they have Evloev on there, so that they don't put both.
They don't put the dog, yeah.
So Evloev significant strike 63.5. Take a guess at his takedown over under.
2.5.
3.5.
3.5. Interesting. That would so the over would cash if he was able to repeat low. Isn't that's a little weirdly low when his last few takedown totals are 4, 9. 3.5.
He is crazy volume in some of his last fights.
Yeah. But like Danny Ige struggles with takedown defense made more sense. Diego Lopez willing to get taken down makes more sense. Dawoodu, not good takedown defense made more sense. Like Allen, I feel much better about providing resistance in that area.
I like that under 3.5 takedowns, bro. I mean, to go to distance with Diego Lopez and only get 4, like the Dan Ige one's kind of like I was gonna say an outlier, but he got 9 in his last in the Ige fight and the fight before.
What is everyone gonna smash on that total? They're gonna smash the over, right? It's at 3.5. Everyone's gonna take the over. Why is it sitting at 3.5?
He could spend a lot of time like up against the cage working for that takedown where just minutes are passing by.
Yeah, I wanna look here. Some of Allen's Allen was taken down 6 times by Mads Burnell. 7.5 minutes in control time. So that was quite a bit. Makwan Amirkhani, 5.5 minutes. But the thing about all these fights, 2016, 2017, that was an eternity ago. Allen's a totally different guy. So how much do you want to read into that? I found
one thing. I would love if I could find an Arnold Allen significant strike number. I would hammer that under. Because you look in the fights, like even the Sadiq Youssef fight.
Yeah.
Arnold Allen won that fight unanimously, but he only landed 21 strikes.
Yep.
He got 2 takedowns and some control time. I mean, that Sadiq Youssef fight is a really good win.
Yeah.
For Arnold Allen. And then the Dan Hooker fight, I remember I was on the over of that fight and I was like, shit, it lost right from the first 20 seconds in. I was like, this over is screwed. And it only took 2.5 minutes for that fight for him to get a finish on Dan Hooker.
Yep.
But Arnold Allen, it's just his wins are kind of split. He is it's 50% of his wins are finishes and the other half are decisions.
Yep.
You look at a guy like Dan Hooker, it's like, oh, well, it's Dan Hooker. But then Dan Hooker comes out and looks like super durable against Jalen Turner.
Yeah.
So it's just tough. It's really tough.
So one of the reasons I was skeptical about Allen is he was kind of rising into the rankings was the low striking volume. But I think some encouraging signs of improvement. 50 in a round on Dan Hooker or 2.5 minutes. Now, some of those were defenseless, but good volume there. And secondarily, barely went into the second round against Cater, landed essentially 30. He landed 28 in the first round. So really encouraging volume steps in the right direction for Allen compared to his historical tendencies. And he did spend a lot of his early career on bottom position where it's basically impossible to score significant strikes from bottom. So, tight fight. Right. I don't know if I have a great betting angle for it other than I might try to talk you into putting the over in our parlay at the end of the show, which we might be able to build here just because we have such a
we can definitely build one this time for sure.
So we'll take a look at that. But let's go back and talk about the fourth to last fight on the card here. Another one that I think is a better betting discussion than it is a fight. Chris Curtis taking on Marc-Andre Barriault. Curtis, maybe a little revenge narrative against Canada. Had that headbutt against Nasruddin Imavov, was a no contest. Curtis coming back north of the border to try to get a little bit of revenge. Taking on a native Canadian, Marc-Andre Barriault, trying to bust into the rankings. I'll admit I was pretty impressed in his last fight against Eric Anders. I was on Anders.
Right.
I didn't expect him to be able to take the power shots, but he was. We know Power Bar's game, kind of cardio-centric, pace, pressure. We know Curtis, elite boxing, great takedown defense, pretty durable. Who you got here, I guess, would ostensibly be my question. Who you looking at, and then I'll present my argument as well.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a high volume fight.
Yeah.
I mean, Curtis has a 92% takedown defense. We know how good he is there. He didn't get a lot of strikes off in that last fight, like in the no contest. I mean, he only landed 26 strikes.
Yeah, Imavov was giving him fits.
Yeah, versus 57. I mean, Imavov's good though.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's funny is Chris Curtis just finds ways to, like, he's in these fluky fights where he just, like, for example, the Kelvin Gastelum fight where he loses the decision.
Weren't you at that one?
The Jack Hermanson fight loses the decision. I mean, and Curtis is durable and has good takedown defense. You almost feel like there's automatic value on Marc-Andre here by decision.
Just from being in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's going to be a great number. Let's take a look. Plus 400. Like, that's a great number here for a guy in Chris Curtis who just feels like he constantly gets screwed in decisions. I mean, I don't think Chris Curtis wins this fight, but I just feel like that's a really good number.
Yeah. I will say here, pretty much all I've ever seen all week is everybody loving Chris Curtis in this spot. And I'm a Chris Curtis guy. I've been a Chris Curtis guy since his UFC debut. Like, I had him against Phil Hawes, got the come from behind knockout. Had him against Buckley, come from behind knockout. He's a pretty big underdog in those fights. Like, I've generally been a Curtis guy. But for someone who is now minus 196 on FanDuel as we sit here live, 36 years old, back-to-back fights with a really nasty headbutt that compromised him in some way. He was dropped in the Gastelum fight. The Imavov one ended. Those are nasty shots to take, like, as far as accrual of damage. And now he's 36. He's going back north of the border, and he's never been a guy that is a minute winner. He's kind of like falling behind, getting his reads, looking for body shots. And then who is one of the best strikers as a minute winner in this entire division? Marc-Andre Barriault. Great cardio, pushes the pace, constant pressure, maybe a suspect chin, right? But, like, I think the narrative here is that Curtis is maybe going to get like a counter TKO, that it's a friendly matchup for him. The problem that I have is Curtis's power is probably a bit overrated at this stage. When you look, he's got just a 0.89% knockdown rate. When I'm talking about elite guys, that's like 2%. So he's not even at 1%, half of that. And it's unsustainable. All 4 of his knockdowns have led to a knockout. So you're looking for regression on dropping a guy, maybe is able to battle through some battle scars and get to it. This line confuses the heck out of me because Barriault, in his own country, natural minute winner, showed improved durability in that Eric Anders fight. I don't think Curtis is a super powerful puncher. He's 36. He's taken some damage, and he's not in his home country like Barriault is, and he's minus 196. And the thing about it is, I'd be skeptical if, like, everyone was slamming Barriault when you look at betting splits and, like, the public was all over Marc-Andre because of the Canadian thing. It's not that way. All of the money, all the tickets at any source you can find is looking at Curtis here. And he's fought bigger names, but you look at that Hermanson fight was a total dud. Could never get his read. And I don't think Jack is a great striker in this middleweight division. His well-roundedness is kind of his signature attribute. Not a lot of takedown volume from either of these guys. I think it's a striking match. And I think Curtis said he's going to fight like it's a 3 a.m. We'll fight at a Waffle House parking lot. I think that's his only chance to win this fight. So if you like Curtis, it's encouraging to hear that out of him. We will see if it comes to fruition, because I think if this goes the distance, I love Marc-Andre Barriault by decision in this fight, bro.
Yeah, no, I'm at this literally at the same exact read as you. I think that you could play Marc-Andre by decision at that 4-1, and then you could sprinkle the round 2-3 KO for Chris Curtis.
What's that?
I think he's gonna be behind on the scorecards.
Yep.
And I think that he's gonna either find that shot or he's not. So round 2 KO TKO is plus 1,000.
Yep.
Round 3 is plus 1,600. I mean, those are great numbers.
Sure.
And honestly, like I feel like Eric Anders really improved, and that was actually a good win.
Yep.
For Marc-Andre there, and then like, how high I am on Anthony Hernandez. He survived till round 3.
Yeah.
I mean, he was getting beat down for sure. The Chidi and Giancani fight, I mean, yeah, he got finished in round 1 there.
Chidi's got hammers,
He
hurt Michal Olechechuk before Olechechuk was able to rally from behind. So
he was stumbling for sure. Yep. This is an interesting fight. I agree with you that the public perception is going to be to hammer Chris Curtis here, but I would much rather take a Curtis KO prop than Curtis moneyline or Curtis decision.
Wow. Okay, Chris Curtis by points is the shortest outcome at FanDuel at plus 155. How does that make any sense? He's never been a minute winner. He's never been a minute winner, and now he's going into Marc-Andre. If it's close, who are the judges going to side with here?
He hasn't won a decision in the he's won one decision in the UFC, and that was against Rodolfo Vieira.
This is the fight I was talking about, like front of mind when I texted you yesterday and said some of these money lines don't match their totals. This fight's favored to go the distance, but Barriault's the underdog. I don't understand how Curtis wins a decision when the guy frustrates the heck out of me, and he's aging. We're not going to get the best version of Chris Curtis we've seen in UFC. He's aged. He's taken the 2 headbutts now consecutively. Like, this is not a guy that is in A+ fighting mode, whether he says it's comeback season or not. So I think I like, if you're on your card, I see the Curtis KO sprinkle with Barriault decision. Those are the big types of numbers that you usually hit and feast on. And it feels like such an obvious angle in this fight. So I love it.
Yeah, and you look at Curtis's finishes outside of Phil Hawes, who we all know the Phil Hawes chin at this point. That was in 2021. Right. Outside of Phil Hawes, every KO is coming in round 2 and 3.
Yeah.
He's had 3 other KOs in the UFC, and 2 of them have been in round 2 against Brendan Allen and Joaquin Buckley.
Yep.
And then the third one was in his UFC debut at Contender Series, and that was a round 3 kick.
Right.
So I just think that he drops round 1. Yep. And then I think he's looking for the finish in round. I think round 2 is probably a close round. Mm-hmm. And I think he's looking for that finish in the back half of round 2 or in round 3. So I think you're going to get crazy value on those KO props late.
Yeah.
And then I think 4-1, you're going to give me 4-1 on a guy in his hometown who's going to put out a better output against a guy who notoriously loses close decisions.
Yep.
I don't see how you can't see value on that plus 400.
Right. And I totally agree with you. I think we're kind of beating a dead horse where we kind of have the same angle of this fight where, like, I'm a Curtis guy. That's why I was very surprised to see this line sitting the way it was. So I think most people think Barriault is the Canadian that ruins everything. I would really think twice about that. But before we start handing out titles, we have this guy, another Canadian, maybe the most valuable Canadian in UFC right now. Like, certainly a guy that seems destined for the rankings at 170. Mike Malott, training with Team Alpha Male, really impressive sub of Adam Fugit last time the promotion was here. Now he's stepping up in competition in a big way. It feels like every step up in competition for a welterweight prospect. Let's feed him Neil Magny or Max Griffin. Well, we're getting Neil Magny on Saturday. And this line has continued to balloon, predictably so. Malott is the prospect. He's rising. He's in his home country. I don't think UFC even wants him to lose this fight. Do you think that he might lose this fight? I'm just curious.
I don't see how. I really don't see how. I mean, I think Neil Magny's done. Like, respectfully, I think he's done. I mean, maybe he could win a decision, but like, I mean, you look at Neil Magny when he goes up against grapplers submitted by Shavkat, submitted by Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns actually made quicker work of him than Shavkat did.
Yep.
Burns finished him in that first round, and he made that look easy. He made that look really easy. And then, if we're being honest, Neil Magny should have been finished in that Ian Gary fight. I mean, he was toast. His leg was completely toast. I don't know what Ian Gary was doing. I had Ian Gary by decision and got lucky as shit on that. He should have finished him like 5 times. So I think this is a submission win. Now, with that said, has Neil Magny ever been knocked out?
I'm not sure. I certainly don't remember one off the cuff.
So he was knocked out in 2018 against Sant. He's never been knocked out in a 3-rounder.
Oh yeah, because that was the 4th round.
That's what it is.
First round knockout.
He's been submitted an awful lot. So I think the obvious. Yeah. I think the shortest outcome here is probably going to be Mike Malott by submission, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, my submission is plus 135. I mean, that's terrible.
do you remember how adamant I was saying Magny was the value side on Gary? And like he had a short notice fight with Phil Rowe. There were some warning signs, but I was like, Gary, we haven't seen his wrestling grappling tested. Like Magny's thing is cardio, pace, push you up against a wall. Magny was running on wounded legs like Bambi that entire fight against Ian Gary, where I feel like Mike Malott has more punching power than Ian Gary does, just like one shot power. Like he put Mickey Gall out flat. He's not a better striker, but like power. And then you look at the submission upside. Malott, obviously very talented and skilled in that department as well. And we've seen Magny submitted plenty by these top level guys. Like,
Yeah.
I think I'd be falling into a trap thinking I'm with you. I think Magny is not the Magny of old where I could count on him to beat Jeff Neal. I could count on him to give a tough fight to an up and comer. You know, he turned away Li Jingliang. Like Magny is a guy that I've been profitable going to in the well, but he's 36 and he's really started to show his age lately. And Malott far more powerful, far more submission danger. Like I think this is your favorite on the card. This is your free square. Now, the question is Magny found a way to get to the cards against Gary, right? He found a way to get there in really strenuous circumstances. That's the fear for me if I'm like looking at Malott in DFS settings is like, or looking at him inside the distance is does the old wily vet find a way to weasel out of this one without getting finished? You said some sub on Mike Malott was plus 135.
Yeah, plus 135. And
Yeah, it's a trash
the KO is only plus 310, which even that number is tough to get behind, just considering Magny really hasn't been KO'd in the UFC in a 3-rounder. And then
at that point, do we look at Malott by points?
Plus 500. It's hard to pass. Now, Malott has 0 decision wins. He only has 1 loss.
You know what this
smells like?
Pereira Blachowicz decision that you took.
Yeah.
Where it's like Blachowicz was outmanned in a lot of those areas, but he's just a wily vet that was able to find a way to the cards.
This is a good question in the chat. Do you think Mike Malott has he fought high level guys? And I think if my answer to that is he's fought decent competition. It's more about how good he's looked in fighting decent competition. Like he's finishing everyone in the first round or early second.
Yep. And my retort to that would be I had those concerns with Phil Rowe, but you could have made an argument Phil Rowe beat Neil Magny. I had those concerns with Ian Gary. You could have argued, I mean, Gary should have finished Magny if we're being real, we're being realistic. The thing is I don't value Magny as the name value in the ranking that he used to have anymore. So I don't actually think this is as big of a step up for Malott as maybe it would have been Neil Magny 3 years ago, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think no, I agree. I think Mike is a really good parlay piece on the money line. I just don't see how he loses this fight. Like, what does he get outpointed on a 3-round decision? Is that his only way he loses? And I just don't see that.
Yeah. The thing about Magny, by the way, Malott has shown good takedown efficiency, 55%, pretty good volume, about 5 attempts per 15 minutes. Magny is a 55% takedown D at this point. It's not good. The lanky, long limbs kind of suggest that. Like Malott could absolutely, if he can't find the sub, just coast on top control here. Like
I just think he's a guy that just seeks those finishes. I don't see him.
He does.
It's like the inside. It's just like you want to just hammer the inside the distance here.
Doesn't that feel like FanDuel saying, please don't bet Mike Malott by sub by putting it all the way down at plus 135 against a guy like Magny? So like
inside the distance is minus 190.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
I
think Magny's finished though. I really do. I think he's finished. I think Ian Gary's a guy that doesn't search for the finish. He lets it come to him. Mike Mallott's a guy that he wants the finish. Yeah. He's going for it.
Magny the concern was the Gilbert Burns fight where he got run over, right? But would you think about just overall betting Malott round 2 plus 430 plus 850 round 3? Like Magny, his IQ buys him some time here.
Yeah,
Malott went to the second round with Fugit, right? Like he went to the second round with Fugit, and Fugit at this point doesn't have any sort of claim to better skills in any area than Magny. So
I agree.
Maybe that's how we
round 2, 3 sub could even look good. Like
Matty and I's entire card is going to be round 2, 3 Robertson, round
literally,
round 2, 3 Curtis, round 2, 3 Malott, round 2, 3
plus 700 round 2 sub, plus 1300 round 3.
Interesting.
And then the round props, just the finish in any round.
Yeah,
He's
I
gonna
still
drop
lean
down to
sub
plus
too.
430, plus 850. Yeah,
I
but
still
like, you feel like Mike Malott there was even a clip of him talking about how he's finished guys in ways they've never been finished before,
Yep,
which is interesting, right? Because like, what if
that
he's
is
like, oh, I want
interesting.
a TKO, Magny in a 3-rounder, like round 2, 3 TKO. I got to see this. 1,200 and 2,300. Round
Right.
2's plus 1,200.
If Magny had shown better submission defense against Burns or Shavkat, I'd be more optimistic. But Malott
Yeah.
showed that that's kind of his thing. That's the area where Magny has been weakest. I talked to a couple sharp guys as well, like film guys way above my pay grade. Both of them gave me Malott sub, and it feels like we're all going to take a bath together on that because it's like the angle everybody comes and arrives on looking at these resumes. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I think I might sooner bet round 2, round 3 just in general to Magny's IQ buys him some time, and then Malott round 2, round 3, I still get plus 430, plus 800. Those are decent numbers for kind of the forecast that I'm looking at. I wonder how we're all gonna take a bath. That's what I'm afraid of in this fight, but we know who's gonna win it. So,
Yeah.
we'll push forward here, and we're gonna hand out belts. This one from the mouth of the lady who was the favorite in this fight. Not an entertaining fight. Mayra Bueno Silva said that, not me. But she's a decent sized favorite here over Raquel Pennington. We will hand Amanda Nunes's belt to somebody. I mean, where do you even start with this? Pennington, 5-fight winning streak. Mayra Bueno fighting for a title because of her name value and at this point relative star value, despite the fact she just got popped for PEDs in her very last fight against Holly Holm. So a little
Yeah.
bit ugly here. But Bueno Silva, modest size favorite. What are you thinking in this women's bantamweight title fight?
I'm not thinking a whole lot, honestly. I mean, I just don't even care. I can't believe this is the co-main because there's some really good fights before it. Like the last 3 fights we just broke down, really, really good fights.
Well, they've got to put the title fight here, right?
I
That
know,
would
I know, I know. I just I don't know what to do with this. I mean, it's funny that guillotine got overturned for
yeah.
PEDs.
It was a nice little ninja choke that she got on
It
Holly
was
Holm.
it was sick, bro.
Um, I you
I
know,
had
I
I had her submission in that fight. I hit that bet.
can I tell you this is the fight that retired my model? Because I had Pennington like minus 145 here, and I just could
Yeah,
not. I not only does it go against our favorite trend, one that we hammer on the show here all the time. Fighters
yeah,
over 35 or 35 and older, which is Pennington in this case, facing someone younger than 35, are 3-31-1 in their last 35 UFC title fights. Like, if you are over 35 against someone who is not, you are a dead person walking into that octagon, relatively speaking. Now, some recent exceptions lately. Shevchenko got the draw against Alexa Grasso, Alex Pereira. So we've seen a little volatility on the women's side with this, but like I have a hard time seeing Raquel Pennington separate in a fight in this way, in a way that embarrasses Bueno Silva. Like, to me, Bueno Silva's already fought her toughest competitor in UFC. That was the Manon Fiorot fight where Fiorot was well ahead in the striking. Mayra doesn't really have much of a takedown game and wasn't able to get to her submission skills. Like, I think the challenge for Mayra in this fight will be trying to get this fight to the mat where to a point where she could win it with a submission, but she might just throw hands, which has not been a good strategy against Raquel. She's a pretty efficient striker, but maybe just slows down a little bit with age. And Mayra has looked fast and pretty explosive in this 135-pound division. Like, this was the fight I overruled it, where at the end of the day, I don't want to have a Raquel Pennington ticket in my hand because she's not a dynamic personality. She doesn't really have anything dynamic about her fight game, not really any high level submission skills, not a history of knockouts. In fact, these ladies, 27 combined UFC fights, 0 knockdowns for or against. When Swill Bill in our chat saying the only play is this fight to put me to sleep, that's probably why, is that signature moments will be few and far between. I just think Mayra's younger, better athlete, person UFC wants to win. Like, I think this was made in mind with, she says she's the chosen one. I think she is the chosen one by UFC, as someone who's actually kind of funny, witty, can handle the belt with persona. And this is a decent matchup for her where she can win this fight with volume. And that's what she's done in a few matchups previously. Her level of competition is pretty bad, but you look at who Pennington has actually beaten. She definitely didn't beat Holly Holm. Split decision with Ketlin Vieira. Like, there's not any impressive standout
she
results
went
here.
she went to the 5th round with Amanda Nunes for the
Yeah,
belt.
in
That's
my
the most
opinion,
impressive thing she's done.
she also lost to Pandy Kianzad. So like this is women's 135. Don't go nuts here. Like I don't have a specific play. Maybe
Yeah.
let me see if Bueno Silva decision is coming in decently priced, just because I've got this fight likely to go the distance. But let's see.
Plus 310.
That's not bad. Submission at plus 200. It's never happened to Pennington, so her submission defense has been on point. Interestingly enough, Pennington by points ahead of Bueno Silva by points. You know, I wonder if Bueno Silva at some point in this fight jumps guard, just tries to get this fight to the ground in a way where she can use her dynamic submission skills, because like if she doesn't get it there with a takedown, it could be tough to come by. But the drama in that is Pennington's takedown defense hasn't always been great. So
Yeah.
weird fight. But I know that if I'm straight picking, I want the younger, more dynamic athlete here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm with you. I think you have to find a way to play Mayra here. I don't hate the decision.
I don't think you have to find a way to play this fight at all. And I may end up not.
If you're gonna bet it, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. Let's move on.
Yeah, this is my least favorite women's MMA fight on the card, which is saying something. So let's talk about the main event. Let's move on to the fight you all came here for anyway. I'm sure we're gonna have half of you looking at Sean, half of you looking at Dricus. I know Maddie's already put 3+ units on Sean Strickland. He's got a pretty strong opinion on this, so I will let him lead the way because there are parts of me that are pretty torn about this fight. And Maddie was right about Leon Edwards when I wasn't sure, so I might just listen to my buddy here. So what made you like Sean in this fight, bud?
Yeah, I mean, look, the one concern here, if you're backing Sean, I think the concern here is he's fighting a guy that's also going to come forward, right? And Sean really, I mean, I don't think Sean has really fought that many guys like that. I mean, you're looking at, I mean, Abus Magomedov, right?
Yep.
Who he just waited for him to gas out.
Yeah.
Pereira, who he knocked out by. Jared Cannonier, I would say, is probably the closest thing to, a guy that's just going to come forward and has good aggression and good strength and size. But no, man, it just goes back to like, I just think Sean is really fucking good. Yep. I think 63% striking defense in a fighting a guy that just loads up. I mean, when you watch DDP's fights, man, like he just explodes forward and throws the most, like when you're just watching the tape on it.
Yeah.
It's like anyone with elite striking defense, you feel like is not going to get touched by those shots. And I could be dead wrong here, right? But I just think that, Sean has a 63% striking defense to Du Plessis 53%. Sean has fought, way more guys, way more 5-rounders, better overall competition in his career. So you just feel like you're getting a better sample size. He's sparring and training with guys like Ankalaev. So, if you're worried about how big and strong DDP is, he's fighting guys that are bigger and stronger in a heavier weight class. I'm not as worried about DDP's cardio as everyone else is. Like everyone thinks he's this terrible gas tank. I don't think he has a terrible gas tank. I think the dude's a professional. He's in shape. He had the nose surgery thing. I think that's not why I'm taking Sean. I'm not expecting him to fall off a cliff cardio-wise the way that Magomedov did. But for me, it's just I feel like I'm getting the more polished striker, the better boxer, the better striking defense, and the guy that I know is never going to gas, and he looks to be in better shape than the Izzy fight. I think that's kind of going viral around social, just the build and the shape that he looks to be in.
Yeah.
But there's just too many reasons for me to take Sean. The 5-round experience, the striking defense, the volume. He can win a decision. He can win a late TKO. I think I think the Robert Whittaker fight, I think DDP was able to big boy him, right? Like just be the stronger, bigger guy. The takedown was really ugly, but he was able to get it to the ground and beat him down the last 30 seconds of round 1. Yep. And I think that elbow cut him up and hurt him. I don't think he takes down Sean. I don't think he does. I think if he does, I don't think he's going to be able to hold him down. I look at Sean as maybe not as technical or as sharp as Whittaker on the feet, but I think he's got better volume. I think he's stronger than Whittaker. I think he can stuff the takedowns. And I just think he's going to be a tough puzzle to figure out. I think if DDP doesn't get him out of there in the first 7.5 minutes, I think that Sean's going to, start to take over.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to start first and foremost saying this is a Sean Strickland show. Both of us took him against Israel Adesanya. We were both on Sean in that fight. Like the matchup was perfect about Izzy really hadn't fought a pressure fight. Like if you go back and watch the tape, it almost kind of seemed like Maddie and I are from the future. I just say that because it's been a long, long time since we were that right about anything.
We've been sucking lately. Yeah.
Yeah. But we've had a pretty good read on Sean. The very interesting handicap here. I will say the way that I typically do things when I see money moving toward Dricus so heavily, and now books have started to come off of their position where they've been taking Dricus money for a long time here, and now it's starting to trend his way. A couple of books actually have him favored right now.
Really?
FanDuel's still sitting at minus 138 for Sean, so it's a little bit across the board and different, which you don't see too often on a UFC title fight, but I think that you can make an argument for both of these guys very easily. Where Dricus, what we're saying about Dricus here, where amateur striking, not going to touch someone with elite striking defense, is kind of what we were saying against Robert Whittaker. You look at in the UFC middleweight record books, Sean Strickland and Robert Whittaker are buddies right next to each other in any defense column you want to put together. And Dricus landed 60% of his significant strikes on him. Like the thing about Dricus is he's so unorthodox, he's really hard to prepare for. So that part is interesting. And the concern, if you like Dricus, maybe one of the reasons why is Sean has had a trouble separating from other middleweights. Dropped a split decision to Cannonier that could have gone one way or another, right? It was knocked out by Alex Pereira in seconds. And that's when you see how easily Pereira found his chin, how quickly Sean went down. That's my concern for Sean, is that he used to fight at welterweight. He's a little bit on the smaller side for this middleweight division, but that wasn't any problem against Izzy, who I said on the show, I was like, I think Izzy's power is grossly overrated, and like it's not something that Sean will really have to concern himself. And Sean, by the way, showed some power of his own in that fight that hasn't always been
for him at
middleweight. So that's an intriguing point if you like Sean, is that Izzy fight showed some newfound power, and Dricus is a guy, 53% striking defense on paper. He can be hit. The thing is that he's just been this tornado of violence that's run over people. Like the takedowns haven't been pretty. The strikes haven't been pretty. He's just been the bigger, stronger guy in a lot of these exchanges. And the thing is that I'm really surprised that so much of the public is backing Dricus in this spot. Maybe it's thinking Strickland got lucky, or they've seen him lose recently. I agree with you that I don't think Dricus's cardio is as bad as that it's being given a rapport for. We've quite literally never seen him truly compromised from it. He was still winning in the third round against Brad Tavares, and somehow that fight.
I rewatched that fight, the full fight yesterday.
And what were your takeaways?
Honestly, Dricus should have won all 3 rounds if he didn't make that stupid error in round 1 where he pretty much went to flip the dude over and then just landed on his back.
Yes.
So I think that fight was a lot closer than it should have been. I think he wins that fight close to 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
The Darren Till fight doesn't really do much for me. The Derek Brunson fight, we all know Derek Brunson's my boy. Brunson almost got him out of there in round 1. I don't care what anybody says. And Brunson's, on the back is basically on the back end of his career, right? And I think Brunson, a couple of years ago, finishes that fight in that first round.
Yeah.
The Robert Whittaker fight was the one that I think puzzled everyone, right? Because he pretty much dropped him with a clean right hand, like it was a jab.
Wasn't Brunson a sub thing though, if I remember correctly? I haven't watched that fight this week, but wasn't Brunson close to a sub in that fight?
Brunson had landed some big shots on the feet.
Gotcha.
Like in the second half of that first round. And then Du Plessis did pretty much almost land a double leg on him, though. I mean, I think Dricus's wrestling and grappling is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I just don't see him I don't see him just like shooting takedowns on Sean. I mean, maybe he does, but I don't think. I mean, from everything we hear about from Sean's teammates and a lot of people in the industry, like Sean is really underrated.
Yeah,
grappling and wrestling and good defensively there at least. But again, that could be tested in this fight for sure.
Right.
I mean, when's the last time that Sean has really fought somebody with really good wrestling? I mean, Jack Hermanson was a split decision.
So Abus took him down early. And it was somewhat easy. The takedown Abus got. Sean got back to his feet pretty quickly from that, but like 84% takedown defense. Like that's always the tough thing with handicapping Strickland, is we still really have no idea how good his wrestling and grappling offense is, because he won't use it due to bravado. So we don't really therefore know how great his defense is, and stylistically a lot of the matchups. Now he stuffed all of Jack Hermanson's takedowns. Hermanson, pretty decent wrestler in this middleweight, is like a a good measuring stick, right? So,
Mhm.
I just, I'm so torn on this fight. The money split's trending away. I'd usually be all over Sean. It reminds me a little bit of when O'Malley fought Sterling, and the obvious, like, way you saw sharps were on Sterling, public was on O'Malley, thought it was going to come to fruition, and then Sean landed a haymaker. And that's the thing here. When it comes to who's the more violent athlete, or maybe the more willing submission artist, the more power in this fight, I think it is Dricus. And that's the scary thing, is that if you're holding a Sean ticket, you are waiting out this storm from Dricus. And really, the finishing equity you think Sean Strickland realistically has is Dricus running himself empty, like running his gas tank empty, and then Sean would conceivably take over the fight with his elite
Yeah.
cardio, right? Um, maybe I almost wonder a cheeky play. I might sit this largely out. I grabbed Du Plessis' money line just because I saw it moving. I might even cash that out still, because I haven't taken a real stance on this fight. But I look at Du Plessis' submission prop. What if he banks 3 rounds? Maybe Sean has a really strong last couple of rounds, but he's not. When you talk about Sean's punching power, it's basically non-existent. I know he dropped Izzy, but 0.35% knockdown rate analytically in my world is
Yeah.
awful. Like that's like
Right.
feather flyweights that don't really have any sort of power. So like Du Plessis by points is 8-1 in this fight. If he banks 3 rounds and then survives, I could absolutely see like a 49-48. We're all talking close scorecards at the end here.
Yeah.
And I think it is a close fight. So I don't,
I
yeah,
If I had to bet Dricus in this fight, I love that number.
yeah,
Because I mean, Sean is historically durable, right? That
agreed.
that Alex Pereira left hook, he just got confused in that exchange. He didn't know what the hell's going on.
And
He kind of
Poetan
got
is so
yeah,
big,
and it
185.
right. And honestly, when he hasn't been finished since 2018 before that. Um, so like I think there's a ton of value on Du Plessis by decision.
I'll
Plus
tell you,
800. Like I think that makes a ton of sense.
if Sean Strickland wasn't the human being that Sean Strickland is, I would bet him in this fight in a nanosecond, because Dricus Du Plessis 40% takedown defense. Sean has been very efficient when he's gone to his wrestling way, way back. Like, that would be an opening for someone who is a normal functioning adult to have in this fight. But Sean's bravado, he says wrestling and grappling is,
Yeah.
expletive, right? I can't trust him to do that, to love this minus 138 number is the problem. If I knew he was going to use his skill set to the best of his ability to win, I would take him here, just like I did against Alex Pereira, where I thought he was going to shoot takedowns, and instead he tried to stand and trade with Poetan. Like,
Yeah.
that's a little bit of the risk, and like the
I mean, what
reward.
do you
Yeah.
what do you do with this total here?
What
The
what
over
what,
under 2.5. It's slightly favored to go under at minus 120.
Oh, 2.5. I like over 2.5.
Yeah. It's
I,
definitely
I
it's definitely scary.
If you like Sean, you should love over 2.5. If
Right,
you're
right.
leaning Dricus, maybe under 2.5 makes more sense. But like when I look at Strickland here, elite striking defense, takedown defense numbers, and then his record of not getting finished is also elite. Like, everything across the board says durability. And even though Dricus himself has a lot of finishing equity coming in, it is a great matchup. I actually think this is probably the hardest matchup for Dricus in the entire top 10. Is Strickland, because of the elite takedown defense, because of how good Sean's head defense is. Like, it's a tough matchup for Dricus. I thought Dricus was going to run over Adesanya
Who do you think comes forward in the first round?
Dricus.
Right. I'm
I
with
don't
you.
think he
I'm
will.
with
I
you
don't
on
think
that.
he has any respect whatsoever for Sean's power.
That's what I'm getting at here. And the only hesitancy to bet Sean from me, because again, I wasn't about Dricus's gas tank.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of a bullshit narrative. But for me, it's like, how good is Sean's striking defense off his back foot versus
true.
when he's pressuring? I think that's the only concern that I have that scares me. Because I don't know that we've really seen it.
Mhm. Kind of the closest thing we got is Poetan when he's on the back foot. He's not really against on the back foot like a lot of fighters are, right? He almost has this way of staying in this mid range where he still is
Yeah,
offensive minded in there, and that's
agreed.
where Strickland got caught, was kind of in that mid range, and
Agreed completely.
that would be my fear. If
I
you're
just
that,
feel like when you just watch footage on DDP, it's like
yeah,
his punches look so. I know he's awkward and his fight style is just so awkward and hard to see, but coming. But like when you're watching footage,
Yeah.
It just feels like a guy that has such good striking defense, and Sean should be able to see all of that coming.
I think my tape homework from this show is I got to watch Sean's first round against Abus again because I think Dricus has at least 2.5 rounds of that type of pressure in him. And he did not handle that first round well. Like he dropped it pretty clearly, and we thought Abus might have been on the way to pulling an upset until he completely ran out of gas. And Dricus will do some of the kicking, some of the high energy stuff, but in general,
He's
it's
just not as dynamic as
no,
Abus though. Like
like the
Abus
kicks.
is like
Yeah,
crazy kicks. Yeah,
yeah,
like crazy kicks. Like Abus is kind of like Izzy, but more offensive. Like he just has more weapons than Dricus.
yeah. I agree. Obviously, cardio not among them. Like like you and I both are in agreement about the cardio. The last thing I want to make is my closing argument here of why I kind of do lean toward Dricus a little bit is that if you had a guy that beat Robert Whitaker taking on Sean Strickland right after Strickland had lost to Cannonier, that guy would be minus 450 against Sean because Whitaker was
Yeah,
this guy that was the only one that was anywhere close to Adesanya. Sean had just
right.
lost and seems pretty beatable. And now you get Dricus at plus money because of the circumstances that happened with Izzy. When I think both of these guys clap Izzy pretty comfortably. It's an interesting value proposition for me. It's almost full circle of how I feel about Jimmy Flick in the first fight. Is kind of how I feel about Dricus, where I feel like I'm getting a really good number compared to what I would have had those events not taken place.
Yeah. No, I'm
So,
with you 100%.
so
It's good.
I mean, you and I may talk. I don't know if we're throwing anything about the main event into our parlay, but let's build one.
Yeah, let's build a quick one for sure.
We'll build a quick one and then we'll get out of here because we've talked about some things I think you and I are in agreement with.
Yeah.
Watch us go back and say so. The first leg I do want to recommend Evloev Allen over. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I'm good with it.
Okay, so I'll add that one in here. Do we want to do
You got
over
it?
2.5
Okay.
at minus 350 or goes the distance minus 310? I think I might just stick to 2.5 just in case we get
Two
like
and a
a
half.
yeah.
2.5.
I'm with you.
I've been burned the last 2 times I did it
Me
too
too.
in the last 2.5 minutes of the 3-round fight. Disgusting.
We got battle scars, you and me. Let's take
Yeah.
a look. How about what do you about Yes Patterson doesn't go the distance?
I'm down. It's just so expensive. Minus 600.
Oh well, yeah. I mean,
Let's just
it's so
yeah.
those two legs together are minus 200. So we're in a decent starting point. We may have to go a little bit shorter with a third leg.
Yeah. I'm down to go Brad. I'm down to go Brad Katona.
Oh, Katona. Yeah, I like Katona too, and that's a way to get exposure to his money line. That's not a straight bet. That's kind of.
Let's throw that money line in there.
What
Minus
about
210.
let's see, can we get Katona decision sub for a double chance and get a little haircut? Submission points is minus 175 versus minus 210. I don't see him knocking out Arm. You know what? No, let's play it safe. Let's play it safe. What
Yeah,
are we
let's just take the money
doing?
line.
So plus 121 if we combine those three legs together.
Yeah.
Do you want to add another one?
Definitely
Or
add another one. Definitely add
what
another
about
one.
Malott money line?
100%.
Wow, we usually struggle with this a bit. That's plus 180.
Yeah. Let's do that. We need to see one go through the hoop. So
Okay.
4-legger. Brad, can
So
you hear the picks? Brad, put
so
it in the
we've got
chat for us.
okay, we've got over 2.5 rounds. Allen Evloev minus 350. Yes Patterson to end inside the distance minus 600. If that is the leg that kills this, I'm gonna actually cry physical tears. I'll do it on
Yeah.
live if you want, Maddie, on TikTok. Brad Katona minus 210, Mike Malott minus 360. Add them all together, pays plus 182. Pretty friendly numbers across the board there. Maybe if you shop around, some of the money lines are actually kind of different this week at books, so who knows what you get. But Fado's usually the best spot.
What's the second leg again? Just repeat
So,
the whole thing.
so the whole thing again, Allen Evloev over 2.5 rounds. Yes Patterson not go the distance minus 600. Katona minus 210 to win. Malott minus 360 to win. So you add all those together, it is plus 182, and it sounds like we got some agreements in chat too.
Yeah. I love that play.
I do too. I think Katona at Malott, very high floor play. The outcome's a little tricky, so I like getting exposure there. And then Yes, I don't think Yes has 3 rounds against a guy like Patterson if he doesn't get him out of there.
Yeah.
We do have an elite gas tank against a bad gas tank, and then we both like Evloev Allen to go the distance. I think what do we have I don't know if FanDuel has a split decision prop on Allen Evloev. That one smells
No,
like split
I
decision,
don't think they do. I think it's DraftKings or
I
another.
I can't say the D word, so maybe you shop around and
Yeah.
and see if you can find a split decision prop because I think it's all over that. So $100 pays 182. We'll see if we can get one through the hoop in Canada. Raptors are hot. Maybe we'll get one through the hoop in Canada too. But appreciate you guys tuning in. I think today was a great show. Maddie and I in agreement
Agreed.
about a lot of things. We were both kind of nervous about this card, but honestly, we're kind of in the same place, which makes me feel a lot better. Hopefully, you guys do too. My podcast, as well as my full preview piece for all 12 fights, will be on FanDuel Research tomorrow. FanDuel.com/research/UFC. All my content there. Maddie's card will drop this weekend as well. He'll have all sorts of fun content. Maybe we'll hit a long shot and get a TikTok reaction video this week too. So we'd love to see that. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you next week. I think just a little bit of housekeeping. We have a UFC event every week through the beginning of March. So Deicious Evloev at the Apex we'll preview next week. Could be good, could be bad. Haven't seen much of the rest of the card. We'll see how that goes at the Apex, but appreciate you guys tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Yes, sir. Good luck to everyone.